I thank Professor Atkins for his speech and now look to Jayne Ozanne to continue the case for the opposition.
Madam President, have yourself a merry little Xmas. It doesn't really scan, does it? And that's why I am strongly opposed to this motion. You see, religion, and in our case here in Britain, Christianity, has such an integral part to play in our corporate culture and identity that we would be severely diminished if we sought to control or silence its expression. There are sadly times where religion has caused great harm, pain, and offence. And I speak as a gay Christian who has survived conversion therapy and who receives much abuse at the hands of other Christians for my beliefs. So I know all too well that there are many things that we need to change and address. But to ban religion completely from our public life is, I believe, unhealthy, unethical, unnatural, and for me as a Christian, unholy. Firstly then, unhealthy. We are not just brains on sticks, nor are we just sexual beings on legs. One of the wonders of our human form is that we are emotional, sexual, physical, mental, and yes, spiritual beings. All the great faiths recognize this, although it can at times be difficult to see this in people who appear to have their minds so clearly set on heavenly things that they seem completely detached from the stark realities of everyday life. I think particularly of the recent so-called pastoral statement by the bishops in the Church of England regarding the place of sex in our lives, and how out of touch, indeed offensive, their pronouncements were to so many of us, whether or not we believe in God. What cannot be denied, though, is that there has, over the past few years, been a resurgence in an interest in all things spiritual. This is often different from organized religion, although the growth of the wellness industry and the use of mindfulness techniques, both in the workplace and the health service, indicates how important it is to exercise and appreciate our spiritual muscle. Now, I would be one of the first to agree that people are increasingly being put off by organized religion because of what they perceive to be hypocritical practices that talk about the love of God for all and then proceed to put in place barriers that exclude and judge certain groups of people. This to me is the complete antithesis of the gospel, where as a Christian I believe that God is love and that he who abides in love abides in God. Full stop. For me, Christ came to embody that love and explain that it is available to all, not because of who we are, but because of who God is. To negate any public expression of a spiritual dimension in our lives, to make it a purely private affair, will be to cut off at the source that which has the potential to help us be fully human. It also severs one of the ties that unites and binds us across our increasingly disparate and isolated communities. As my dear friend and spiritual mentor, Bishop James Jones, recently said in a speech in Exeter, even in this age of diminished allegiance to institutional religion, you cannot ignore how Christianity has shaped the language, the literature, the learning, the leisure, the laws, the liberty, and the landscape of British culture. For instance, when our nation grieves, we do so still by coming together for acts of corporate worship. After national tragedies, it is to our spiritual homes that the vast majority retreat, laying flowers, signing condolence bookses, and seeking, if we are so minded, consolation in our faith that one day there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the former things have passed away. Similarly, we come together to mark acts of celebration too, from royal weddings to diamond jubilees. Of course, these need to be sensitively handled for those of all faiths and none, for we do not all believe, and we certainly do not all believe the same thing. But to address this by ending all forms of public religious expression is to rob us of one of the greatest treasures in our national psyche. As it happens, in 1999, the Labour government under Tony Blair sought to do just that. Here was a Prime Minister who was informed by his trusted aide, Alistair Campbell, that he didn't do God. I was on the Archbishop's Council at the time, working alongside Archbishop George Carey. And much to our surprise, we were told in no uncertain terms that there was to be no moment of religious reflection during the celebrations to mark the end of the millennium, which I must admit, I always thought deeply ironic, given the millennium in itself was a date dependent on Jesus Christ. Bemused but not unperturbed, I suggested to Lord Carey that we might want to ask the British people what they thought on the matter. And so he and I commissioned a YouGov poll that showed quite clearly that the nation did indeed want such a moment. And so, reluctantly, the government agreed that the Archbishop could lead prayers in the form of the Lord's Prayer live on national television on December the 31st, 1999. Who was to guess that just over 12 years later, I would be working alongside Mr. Blair as a director of his Faith Foundation, which was committed to helping people of all faiths and none understand each other. You see, I do not believe that the problem is religion per se. Rather, the problem is with those who do not respect those who have differing beliefs or indeed no beliefs, and who use religion to coerce and control. We have seen far too many examples of what happens when religious leaders become unaccountable, the dark side of religion. And far more needs to be done to recognize and safeguard against this. Power corrupts, and religious leaders are just as fallible as others. However, that said, they also have the propensity to model something countercultural and wholly good, where their voice can provide a healing balm or a prophetic word. I think of the priest, Father Martin McGill, who spoke out at the tragic funeral of Lyra McKee and shamed the Northern Irish politicians for not coming together sooner. As I've said, I believe that suppressing religious discourse in public life is not just unhealthy, but unethical too. You do not deal with a problem by banning it, for you will force it underground where there is no hope of ensuring proper accountability and where resentment and anger will just simmer and thrive. A society that looks to dictate what can and cannot be discussed in public is a society governed by fear rather than one founded on the principles of openness, fairness, and love. My father and his generation endured 2 world wars to ensure that we maintain our freedoms and religious liberties, which we have a moral duty to protect and cherish. I mentioned that I thought it to be unnatural too, as for me our universe is one that requires us to openly wonder at the beauty of creation and the divine order that must, I believe, lie behind it. I speak as a Cambridge mathematician with a deep love of science and a hunger of understanding the eternal scientific truths underpinning our universe. However, as a Cambridge mathematician, I have come to accept that there are certain things that we will just never know, and that it is possible, indeed critical, to live with uncertainty and so remain open to new possibilities. Science is not the competition, but it is the means to understanding just how utterly extraordinary the creative power behind our universe ultimately is. There must be room in our public discourse for us to speak out about such things without the desire to close the debate down. As someone rightly once said to me, "Don't worry about upsetting God, Jayne. He's big enough. He can take care of himself." And so, to the crux of the matter, to me as a Christian, to ban my ability to speak out about my faith and the influence it has on my life would, for me, be an unholy act which goes against all that I stand for as a Christian. I respect that that is not what many of you believe, but my hope is that despite this, you would still want to respect my ability to practice my belief and to live according to my conscience. Yes, of course, we may need to look at agreeing the parameters in which I can do this so as to ensure the dignity and safety of all, particularly on matters that can cause harm and offence. Yes, of course, we may need to look at the privileges and powers automatically given to certain figures in our establishment. Forgive me. However, if the society is to be a fully functioning society which braces and celebrates the diversity of all, then we need to learn to respect each other and our differences and make space for each other so that we can all thrive. In conclusion, I believe one should never seek to ban, but rather to understand. One should never seek to control, but rather to empower. One should never seek to silence, but rather to listen and learn. So let us work together to put in place the safeguards that we need, so that we can ensure that all who want to can say, "May all your Christmases be bright." Thank you.